Picture this: a lone scholar, hunched over a desk, the only light in the room coming from a flickering candle. The air is thick with the scent of old parchment as they trace their fingers across the pages of an ancient text. The words of Shakespeare's Macbeth whispering back to them like echoes from another time. But it's not just the tragic tale of ambition and downfall that holds their attention tonight. No, their mind is fixed on something far more mysterious: the witches. Those enigmatic figures who slink through the play, their prophecies weaving a web of fate around Macbeth, pulling him toward his doom. What if these witches aren't just supernatural puppeteers? What if they are something far more profound, a mirror reflecting our deepest questions about free will, destiny, and the choices that define us? Wherever you are right now, whether it's late at night with the stars peeking through your window or early morning with the sun just beginning to rise, we'd love to know, what time is it where you are? Let us know in the comments below as we settle into this journey together, because tonight we're diving into the shadowy world of Shakespeare's most infamous prophets, the Witches of Macbeth. Their words have haunted audiences for centuries, sparking debates about whether they truly control fate or simply reveal the darkness already lurking in Macbeth's heart. Are they agents of chaos, or do they expose the fragile line between choice and destiny? There's something undeniably mesmerizing about these witches. The way they appear out of the mist, their riddles dripping with ambiguity, their presence both terrifying and irresistible. Shakespeare didn't just write them as mere plot devices, they're a force of nature, a challenge to our understanding of power and persuasion. And as we unravel their role in the play, we'll discover how they blur the boundaries between prophecy and manipulation, between what's foretold and what's chosen. So lean in, let the candlelight flicker around you, and prepare to see Macbeth in a way you never have before. Because this isn't just a story about a man who falls from grace. It's a meditation on the forces that shape us, and whether we ever truly have control over our own fate. The first time Macbeth encounters the witches on that blasted heath, the air crackles with something more than just thunder. Their greeting, "All hail, Macbeth, that shalt be king hereafter," lands like a spark in dry tinder. Notice how Shakespeare crafts these words with deliberate ambiguity. They don't say how Macbeth will become king, or when, or even if the crown will bring him joy. Just a tantalizing hint of power dangling before him, ripe for the taking. And that's where the genius lies, because prophecies aren't just predictions. They are mirrors. The witches reflect back the desires already simmering in Macbeth's heart, giving him permission to chase what he secretly craved all along. Imagine standing in his place for a moment. You've just fought bravely in battle, proven your loyalty to King Duncan, and then these otherworldly figures whisper that the throne could be yours. Wouldn't part of you wonder if fate itself was nudging you forward? That's the psychological trap Shakespeare sets. The prophecy isn't just words, it's a key that unlocks Macbeth's ambition, making him complicit in his own undoing. And yet, here's where the debate begins. Does the prophecy cause his downfall, or does it simply reveal the ambition that was always there? A fellow scholar once argued with me fiercely about this. The witches are manipulators, they insisted. They plant the idea in Macbeth's head like poison. But I countered, if that were true, Why does Lady Macbeth, who never meets the witches, share the same hunger for power? The seeds of ambition were already sown. The witches merely water them. Their words are slippery, open to interpretation, much like the whispers of our own doubts and desires. That's what makes them so terrifying. They don't control Macbeth. They show him the path he was already tempted to take. Think of it like standing at a crossroads in the fog. Someone points down a shadowed path and says, "This way leads to glory." They don't mention the cliffs along the edge. Is it their fault if you choose to walk it? Macbeth hears what he wants to hear, just as we all do when faced with our own ambitions. The brilliance of Shakespeare's witches isn't in their magic. It's in how they expose the human tendency to confuse desire with destiny. And that's a revelation far more unsettling than any cauldron or curse. Macbeth's soliloquy after the witches vanish is like watching a storm gather inside a man's soul. This supernatural soliciting cannot be ill, cannot be good. He murmurs, his voice trembling with the weight of possibility. Notice how Shakespeare crafts this moment. Macbeth isn't horrified by the prophecy. He's electrified. The conflict isn't between him and the witches, but within himself. His mind races, stitching together justifications like a tapestry of half-truths. If fate has promised him the crown, surely seizing it can't be wrong. Yet beneath the feverish logic, there's a flicker of dread. Present fears are less than horrible imaginings, he admits, as if already glimpsing the blood-stained path ahead. This is where the witch's true power lies, not in casting spells, but in holding up a mirror to Macbeth's deepest self. They don't force his hand, they give his ambition permission to breathe. When he whispers, "Stars, hide your fires, let not light see my black and deep desires," it's a confession. The darkness was always there, coiled in his heart like a sleeping serpent. The prophecy merely startles it awake. Outside the scholar's window, thunder growls low in the distance, rattling the panes. A coincidence, or does nature, like Macbeth, shudder at the unraveling of moral order? Shakespeare often wove the natural world into his tragedies. Storms brewed when kingdoms trembled. Owls shrieked at murder. Here, the tempest isn't just atmosphere, it's an echo. As lightning forks the sky, the scholar wonders, is this how Macbeth felt, standing at the edge of choice, with heaven itself seeming to recoil? There's a chilling parallel between Macbeth's inner chaos and the storm's fury. Both are upheavals of natural order, one in the mind, one in the world. The witches, then, aren't puppeteers, they're catalysts. They tilt the first domino, but it's Macbeth who sets the whole line in motion. His soliloquy reveals the tragic irony. He believes he's wrestling with fate, when really, he's wrestling with himself, and that's the heart of Shakespeare's genius. The supernatural doesn't overshadow human agency, it illuminates it. Listen to how Macbeth's language shifts as the soliloquy unfolds. Early lines stumble with uncertainty. If good, why do I yield to that suggestion? But by the end, his resolve hardens like cooling iron. Chance may crown me without my stir, he muses, testing the idea of passive reward, yet within breaths, he's scheming. The witches didn't plant that shift. They simply handed him the seed. He's the one who chooses to water it, to let it twist through his conscience until it chokes everything else. And what of the storm outside the scholar's window? It's easy to dismiss it as mere mood setting, but consider this. In Shakespeare's time, people believed the natural and supernatural worlds were intertwined. A king's corruption could blight the land itself, so when the sky darkens as Macbeth's morality fractures, it's not just symbolism, it's a warning. The universe, in its own way, is recoiling. The scholar leans closer to the text, their candle guttering in a sudden draft. Somewhere between the howling wind and Macbeth's whispered ambitions, a truth takes shape. Evil isn't just done, it's chosen. And no prophecy, no witch, no storm can bear the blame for that. Banquo stands in stark contrast to Macbeth in that fateful moment on the heath, where Macbeth leans into the witch's words like a man grasping at a lifeline. Banquo holds back. His voice cuts through the eerie silence with a warning that should have been Macbeth's salvation. The instruments of darkness tell us truths, win us with honest trifles, to betray us in deepest consequence. There's a weight to his words, a clarity that Macbeth, drunk on prophecy, fails to grasp. Banquo sees the trap hidden beneath the honey. He recognizes that even truths can be weapons in the hands of those who deal in shadows. The scholar's fingers pause over the page as they read Banquo's line again, their candle flickering as if disturbed by the thought. Then, something catches their eye. A slip of paper tucked beneath their inkwell, its edges yellowed with age. They unfold it carefully, and there, in unfamiliar handwriting, the same words stare back. The instruments of darkness tell us truths. A cold ripple runs down their spine. Who left this here, and why now? Banquo's skepticism is more than just wisdom. It's a mirror held up to Macbeth's fatal flaw. Where Macbeth hears destiny, Banquo hears temptation. Where Macbeth sees inevitability, Banquo sees choice. It's no accident that Shakespeare gives Banquo this line right after the witches vanish. He's the counterweight, the voice of reason in the storm. And yet, history remembers Macbeth's tragedy, not Banquo's caution. Why? Because warnings are only powerful if they're heeded. Think of it like standing at the edge of a cliff with two friends. One peers over and steps back, saying, "It's too dangerous." The other leans forward, mesmerized by the view. The drop doesn't change, only their reactions do. Banquo steps back, Macbeth leans in, and that's the heart of Shakespeare's tragedy. The witches don't corrupt Macbeth, they expose who he already is. Banquo's words are a litmus test for the soul. The scholar's hand trembles slightly as they set the note aside. Outside, the storm has quieted, leaving an unsettling stillness. They can't shake the feeling that Banquo's warning wasn't just for Macbeth. It's for anyone who's ever been seduced by a promise too good to be true. Because darkness doesn't always come with a clap of thunder or a witch's cackle. Sometimes it's a whisper, a prophecy, a scrap of paper on a desk, and the real question isn't whether the message is true, it's what you choose to do with it. The second prophecy arrives like a serpent slithering through the cracks of Macbeth's crumbling resolve. This time, the witches conjure apparitions, specters that slink from their cauldron, each whispering promises designed to lull him into a false sense of invincibility. None of woman born shall harm Macbeth, one hisses, while another croons. Macbeth shall never vanquished be, until great Burnham Wood to high Dunsinane Hill shall come against him. On the surface, these seem like unshakable guarantees, armor against fate itself, but the scholar's pen hovers over the page, their brow furrowing. These aren't truths. They are riddles wrapped in shadows, tailor-made to exploit Macbeth's growing paranoia. Just as the scholar scribbles this realization, the room's single light bulb flickers. Once, twice, then plunges them into darkness. Only the pale glow of their laptop screen remains, casting long, wavering shadows across the walls. For a heartbeat, the air feels charged, as if the very atmosphere is echoing Macbeth's misplaced confidence. Because that's the cruel genius of the witches' illusions. They don't just predict the future, they distort it. Macbeth hears invincibility, but the audience hears irony. We know what he doesn't, that none of woman born refers to Macduff's Caesarean birth, that Birnam Wood will march via soldiers' camouflaged branches. The prophecies are linguistic traps, designed to make Macbeth drop his guard while the noose tightens. Shakespeare didn't write these scenes to showcase supernatural power. He wrote them to expose how easily we're deceived by the things we crave most. Macbeth clings to the witch's words like a drowning man to driftwood, blind to the fact that the wood is rotten, and isn't that the most human of failings? To hear only what we want, to mistake ambiguity for assurance. The scholar's fingers tremble slightly on the keyboard, the glow of the screen, their only anchor in the sudden dark. It's impossible not to draw the parallel. Macbeth, too, was left with nothing but the faint, flickering light of his own delusions. Outside, the wind howls, rattling the window pane like an impatient spirit. The scholar's mind races back to Banquo's ghost, that silent specter at Macbeth's feast. Another illusion, another truth dressed as a lie. The witches don't just manipulate Macbeth with their prophecies, they isolate him, stripping away allies until all he has left are their slippery promises. And isn't that the ultimate trap? To make someone so reliant on your words that they can't see the world without them. The laptop's glow dims momentarily, as if responding to the thought. Here's the chilling truth, the scholar scribbles in the margins. The witches never lied, not once. Every prophecy comes to pass, just not in the way Macbeth assumes. That's the real horror. It's not about falsehood, it's about interpretation. The witches hand Macbeth a knife, and he stabs himself with it, believing all the while that it's a shield. The power outage, the eerie glow, it's all a reminder that darkness isn't just the absence of light. It's the space where illusions thrive, where confidence becomes complacency, where a king who thinks himself untouchable never hears the footsteps behind him. Somewhere in the distance, a clock chimes, its sound muffled by the storm. The scholar shivers, though the room isn't cold. Time, it seems, is the one thing even the witches can't manipulate. Their prophecies unfold at their own pace, revealing their traps only when it's far too late to escape them. And as the scholar stares at the dim screen, they can't help but wonder how many of us are clinging to our own versions of Birnam Wood, mistaking the rustling leaves for safety, never realizing the forest is already moving. Hecate's arrival in Macbeth is like a sudden frost, creeping across the page, brief, chilling, and laden with unspoken significance. She appears only once, materializing in Act 3 to scold the witches for meddling without her consent. How did you dare to trade and traffic with Macbeth in riddles and affairs of death? She demands, her voice a whip crack in the dark. Scholars have debated her role for centuries. Is she the true architect of Macbeth's downfall, the puppet master behind the puppets? Or is she merely a theatrical flourish, added later to heighten the supernatural spectacle. The scholar's fingers trace her lines in the worn text, their breath visible in the suddenly frigid air of the study. There's something unsettling about Hecate's reproach. It suggests the witch's prophecies weren't fate at all, but a game played without her permission. A draft slithers under the door, lifting the corners of the manuscript the scholar has been poring over, a crumbling, lesser-known folio from the 1600s. Its margins bristle with inked annotations, one of which catches their eye: Hecate's true scene, excised for fear of audience alarm. The words send a jolt through them. Could Shakespeare have written more for Hecate, only to cut it for being too unsettling? The idea takes root like a thorn. In this version, Hecate doesn't just reprimand the witches. She unveils a vision of Macbeth's corpse, his crown shattered, his eyes pecked by crows. This is the end of all who cheat the wheel of fate, she intones. The scholar's pulse quickens. If this was meant to be in the play, it changes everything. Hecate isn't just a sidebar, she's the embodiment of cosmic justice, ensuring that no one twists destiny without consequence. The temperature in the room drops further, the candles flame, guttering as if pressed by an invisible hand. The scholar wraps their coat tighter, but the cold feels deeper than the air. It's the chill of recognition, because if Hecate represents fate's inevitability, then Macbeth's tragedy isn't just about ambition or choice. It's about the universe correcting itself. Every murder, every paranoid rampage, every moment of false security, all of it was leading him back to the balance Hecate demands. The witch's prophecies weren't lies, but neither were they gifts. They were tests, and Macbeth, like so many before him, failed spectacularly. A floorboard creaks in the hallway outside the study. The scholar freezes, their pen hovering above the page. For a breathless moment, they could swear they hear the rustle of skirts, the whisper of something both ancient and impatient. But when they turn, there's only shadows. Still, the air thrums with tension, as if the very walls are waiting for them to piece together the truth. Hecate's presence, even in her single scene, casts a long shadow. She's the reminder that fate isn't just something that happens to us, it's something we provoke. Macbeth didn't just misinterpret the witch's words, he challenged the natural order. And Hecate, like a storm on the horizon, was always coming to set things right. The manuscript's brittle pages seem almost to hum under the scholar's fingertips. What other secrets have been lost to time? What other warnings were deemed too frightening to stage? The scholar's mind races with possibilities, but one thing is clear: Hecate's brief appearance is anything but an afterthought. She's the quiet click of a trap being sprung, the moment the audience realizes too late that the real horror wasn't the witch's prophecies, it was the price of believing them. Lady Macbeth enters the play like a thunderclap. Her first words aren't just spoken, they're hurled into the silence. Glamis thou art, and Cawdor, and shalt be what thou art promised. She hisses, her voice a blade honed on ambition. The scholar leans closer to the text, their candle flickering as if recoiling from the heat of her will. Here's the chilling truth: Lady Macbeth doesn't need cauldrons or riddles to bend fate. Her power is raw, human, and far more terrifying because of it. While the witches whisper in shadows, she stands in broad daylight, twisting Macbeth's resolve with nothing but words and the unshakable certainty of someone who's already mapped every step to the throne. A gust of wind rattles the study window, and the scholar's eyelids grow heavy despite themselves. The last thing they see before sleep takes them is Lady Macbeth's soliloquy glaring up from the page. Unsex me here, fill me from the crown to the toe top, full of direst cruelty. Then darkness and blood, so much blood. In the dream, their own hands are stained with it, dripping onto the manuscript below. They jolt awake with a gasp, their heart pounding like a drum. The candle has burned low, but the page is clean. No blood, only words, yet the metallic tang lingers in the air. Or is that just imagination? Shakespeare never lets Lady Macbeth and the witches share a scene, and there's genius in that separation. The witches deal in half-truths and fog. Lady Macbeth demands clarity. Look like the innocent flower, but be the serpent undirt, she commands, her strategy devoid of ambiguity. While the prophecies slither into Macbeth's mind, she kicks down the door. The scholar rubs their temples, trying to shake the remnants of the dream. It's impossible not to notice the parallels. The witches offer Macbeth a crown, wrapped in mist. Lady Macbeth hands him a dagger. Both are catalysts, but only one feels like a collaborator. That's what makes her so unnerving. The witches are external, almost theatrical in their menace. But Lady Macbeth, she's intimacy turned lethal. When she questions Macbeth's manhood, when you durst do it, then you were a man. She's not prophesying, she's surgically removing his excuses. The scholar's fingers hover over the line, their skin prickling. This isn't supernatural manipulation, it's the horror of recognition. Macbeth sees in her what he could be if fear didn't hold him back. And that's the real poison. Not the witch's visions, but the mirror his wife holds up to his own hunger. The dream lingers like a shadow at the edge of vision. Blood on hands, a relentless scrubbing that never cleans. It's Lady Macbeth's eventual undoing, of course. Her sleepwalking scene is the echo of that first, fierce determination, curdling into guilt. The scholar's breath steadies as they trace her arc, from steel-hearted architect to broken soul murmuring, out, damned spot. Here's the cruel twist Shakespeare plants. Lady Macbeth begins as the witches' equal in ruthlessness, but where they remain enigmatic, untouchable, she crumbles under the weight of what she's set in motion. The supernatural doesn't bleed, humans do. Outside, an owl cries the same sound that pierced the night before Duncan's murder. The scholar shivers, pulling their robe tighter. They think of the note they found earlier. The instruments of darkness tell us truth. And wonder, was Lady Macbeth one of those instruments? Not a witch, but something just as dangerous. A woman who needed no spells to turn prophecy into action. Only ambition sharpened to a point, and perhaps that's the play's most unsettling question. Which is more potent, the whisper of fate or the voice of someone who believes in it too much? The candle gutters out, plunging the room into darkness, but the scholar doesn't reach for another. They sit very still, the weight of the question pressing down. Because if the witches are the spark and Macbeth, the kindling, then Lady Macbeth is the wind that fans the flames, and fire, once lit, doesn't discriminate between prophet and pawn. It consumes them all. The air in the study grows thick as the scholar reaches the sleepwalking scene, that eerie moment when Lady Macbeth, once so ruthless, wanders the castle in the dead of night, her hands scrubbing at invisible blood. The candlelight seems to dim on its own as they press play on the Asthma recording. A voice, hushed and fraying at the edges, fills the room. Out, damned spot. Out, I say. The words crawl along the spine. Too intimate, too raw. This isn't performance. It's unraveling. The scholar's own fingers twitch involuntarily, as if they, too, feel the phantom stickiness of guilt. Here's the cruel irony Shakespeare plants. Lady Macbeth, who once mocked her husband's hesitation, now drowns in the very fear she thought beneath her. Her descent isn't just madness, it's the supernatural's aftershock. The witches never touch her, yet their influence lingers like a stain no amount of scrubbing can lift. The recording loops. All the perfumes of Arabia will not sweeten this little hand. And suddenly, the room feels smaller, the walls pressing in. The scholar's breath hitches. Is that a whisper just beyond the audio, or the house settling? The line between analysis and haunting thins to a thread. Consider the timing. Her sleepwalking begins only after Macbeth's second encounter with the witches, after their apparitions spin him deeper into paranoia. Coincidence, or is Lady Macbeth's sigh key the collateral damage of their meddling? The scholar's notes scatter as a sudden draft lifts the pages. One catches the light, revealing a marginal scrawl. The witch's words fester in her too. Because while Macbeth acts on the prophecies, Lady Macbeth absorbs their poison differently. Her unraveling isn't from seeing ghosts, it's from becoming one. The recording's whispers grow layered, overlapping. What's done cannot be undone, tangling with to bed, to bed. The effect is hypnotic, disorienting. The scholar's eyelids grow heavy, their head nodding forward. Just before sleep takes them, a final, icy thought surfaces. What if Lady Macbeth's sleepwalking isn't just guilt? What if it's the witch's final trick? To make her relive every crime, not as a queen, but as a vessel for their amusement. The candle snuffs itself out as the last whisper fades, leaving only the dark and the unshakable sense that some curses don't need cauldrons, just silence. And time. Macbeth's world is collapsing like a castle built on sand when the news of Lady Macbeth's death reaches him. The scholar's fingers freeze over the page as they reach this moment. The way Macbeth barely reacts, his grief swallowed by something far bleaker, numbness. She should have died hereafter, he mutters, the words hollow as a rotten log. There's no rage, no tears, just the chilling acceptance of a man who's already lost too much to feel anything at all. But here's the twist. Even as his humanity withers, his grip on the witch's prophecies tightens. Without Lady Macbeth's ferocity to anchor him, he becomes something far more dangerous. A man with nothing left to lose, clinging to riddles as his last lifeline. The scholar's pen trembles as they underline Macbeth's next words. I pull in resolution and begin to doubt the equivocation of the fiend that lies like truth. It's a confession. He knows the witch's words are slippery, yet he can't let go. Like a gambler doubling down on a losing hand, he convinces himself the next prophecy will save him. The irony is brutal. The more he relies on their illusions, the more he loses control. Just then, a sharp knock rattles the study door. The scholar jumps, their heart pounding as if they've been caught in Macbeth's own paranoia. A student stands in the doorway, their face shadowed by the dim hallway light. Do you think Macbeth ever had a choice? They ask, their voice quiet but insistent. Or was it all just fate? The question hangs in the air, thick as the silence after a thunderclap. The scholar leans back, struck by the eerie parallel. Here they are, dissecting Macbeth's desperation for certainty, while someone stands before them, seeking the same answers. Macbeth's tragedy isn't just that he trusted the witches, it's that he needed to. By the time Birnam Wood marches toward Dunsinane, he's not a king defending his throne. He's a drowning man clutching at straws. The scholar watches the student's expectant face and realizes something unsettling. Macbeth's desperation is an ancient history. It's human nature. When the ground crumbles beneath us, don't we all reach for something, anything, to promise us stability? Whether it's a prophecy, a superstition, or the cold comfort of everything happens for a reason, the impulse is the same. The student shifts impatiently, and the scholar finally responds. Macbeth had choices, but fear made them invisible. The words taste bitter because the truth is, fate didn't kill Macbeth. His own refusal to let go of its illusion did. Outside, the wind moans through the trees, a sound too much like the whispers that once filled Macbeth's ears. The student nods slowly, but their eyes stay troubled. Some questions, it seems, don't have easy answers. Just like the witches' prophecies, they only make sense when it's too late to matter. The words, Birnam Wood, and none of woman born slither through Macbeth's mind like live wires, sparking false confidence even as the audience shivers with dread. The scholar's pen hovers over these phrases, tracing the cruel genius of Shakespeare's wordplay. Birnam Wood isn't a forest, it's an army camouflaged with branches. None of woman born doesn't mean invincibility. It means Macduff, ripped from his mother's womb by cesarean. The prophecies weren't lies, they were linguistic landmines, camouflaged in plain sight. A cold realization seeps into the scholar's bones. Macbeth's tragedy isn't that he believed the witches, but that he stopped listening too soon. The desk lamp flickers as they jot this down, casting jagged shadows across their notes. When the light steadies again, the page beneath their hand is no longer as they left it. The margins bristle with unfamiliar script, a single phrase repeated in frantic loops. The wood walks. The wood walks. The scholar's breath catches. They definitely didn't write this. The ink is fresher than theirs, the letters slanting backward as if scrawled in haste, or by someone looking over their shoulder. Shakespeare loved his audience to be one step ahead of his heroes, while Macbeth struts, convinced the prophecies make him untouchable. We're already wincing at the irony. The scholar's fingers tremble as they flatten the disturbed page. That's the true horror of the witches' craft. They don't just predict the future, they weaponize interpretation. Macbeth hears safety where we hear doom. And isn't that how so many real-life tragedies unfold? Not with blatant deception, but with willful misreading. The scholar's coffee has gone cold, but they don't dare leave to refresh it. The air in the study feels charged, as if the very molecules are waiting for the next revelation. A floorboard creaks in the hallway, not the usual settling groan of an old house. This is precise, rhythmic, like footsteps pausing outside the door. The scholar's pulse hammers in their throat. Logic insists it's the wind, but logic feels flimsy when their notes keep rearranging themselves. They force their focus back to the text. Macduff's caesarean birth wasn't just a twist. It was Shakespeare gut-punching the audience with the futility of literalism. None of woman born sounds absolute until you remember that language, like fate, has trapdoors. The lamp flickers again. This time, when it steadies, The entire notebook has shifted to the desk's edge, pages splayed open to Act 5. A passage is underlined in jagged red ink, and be these juggling fiends no more believed, that palter with us in a double sense, Macbeth's dying epiphany. Too late, as always, the scholar's skin prickles. That red ink isn't theirs either. They reach to slam the book shut and freeze. The temperature drops so abruptly, their breath mists in the air. Somewhere beyond the study door, a branch scrapes the window like skeletal fingers, burn-on wood, creeping closer in the dark. The scholar's laugh is too loud in the sudden silence. Coincidence, all coincidence, but their hand shakes as they click on the desk lamp's brighter setting. Light floods the page, revealing one final anomaly. Their original notes on the prophecies are gone. In their place, a child's crude drawing of 3 stick figures circling a cauldron. Beneath it, block letters spell out a message that wasn't there 10 minutes ago. You see the trap now. But can you avoid it? Outside, the wind howls through the trees. Or is it laughter, thin and ancient, threading through the leaves? The witches vanish from Macbeth as suddenly as they appeared, mid-prophecy, mid-chant, leaving behind only the acrid scent of sulfur and the echo of their laughter. The scholar's pen stills, hovering over the page where their last words hang unfinished. It's a deliberate choice by Shakespeare, this abrupt exit. No grand farewell, no final curse. Just silence, and in that silence, a terrible truth takes shape. The witches were never the architects of Macbeth's fate. They were the match struck in a room already soaked with gasoline. A sound ripples through the study, a laugh, faint and mocking, drifting from the hallway. The scholar's head snaps up, but the door hangs open onto empty darkness. Their pulse thrums in their ears. Imagination, surely, yet the air feels charged, as if the walls themselves are humming with the witch's vanished energy. Because here's the thing about supernatural forces in storytelling, they're most potent when they're absent. The moment they leave, the real question lingers. Was it ever them at all, or just the darkness we invited in? Shakespeare understood this better than anyone. The witches don't stick around to witness Macbeth's downfall because they don't need to. Their work is done the second he internalizes their words, twisting them into excuses for his own ambition. The scholar's fingers tighten around their pen, the ink bleeding into a small, star-shaped blot on the page. It's unnerving how relevant that feels today. How many of us clutch onto outside voices, horoscopes, algorithms, charismatic influencers, to justify choices we've already made. Macbeth's real tragedy isn't that he listened to the witches. It's that he never learned to stop. Another laugh skitters down the hallway, closer this time. The scholar doesn't turn. They know better. Some echoes aren't meant to be chased. Instead, they focus on the text, on the space where the witches once stood. Their absence is louder than their presence ever was, because while Macbeth spirals into paranoia, hiring murderers, seeing ghosts, the witches are conspicuously, pointedly gone. They've moved on, and that's the final, brutal lesson. Chaos doesn't linger where it's no longer entertained. The candle gutters suddenly, though no draft disturbs the air. In the flickering light, the scholar's shadow looms large against the wall, a hunched, exaggerated silhouette that could almost be mistaken for a figure in a pointed hat. They shake their head, dispelling the illusion, but the thought lingers. Maybe the witches never really leave. Maybe they just change forms, waiting. watching, ready to whisper again the next time someone mistakes their own reflection for a prophecy. The last of the candlelight pools around the manuscript, illuminating one final line: fair is foul, and foul is fair. The scholar exhales, their breath stirring the page, the witch's signature paradox, a reminder that nothing is ever as simple as it seems. Not prophecies, not guilt, not even endings. Especially not endings, because somewhere beyond the study, beyond the reach of the dying light, three voices begin to whisper again, and the wood, as always, keeps walking. Macbeth's downfall unfolds like a slow-motion avalanche, each step deliberate, yet inevitable. The scholar's notes sprawl across the desk, the margins now littered with symbols they don't recognize, spirals that resemble serpentine whispers, jagged lines like lightning, frozen mid-strike. Their hand hesitates over the strange markings, ink smudged as if applied in haste, or by another hand entirely. The witch's role crystallizes in their mind, not puppet masters, but provocateurs. They didn't script Macbeth's tragedy. They handed him the quill and watched him sign his own name in blood. The clock's chime shatters the silence, its tolling stretched unnaturally, each note hanging in the air like a blade poised to fall. The scholar's skin prickles. Time itself feels distorted, as if the study has slipped into the same limbo where the witches brew their charms. Because here's the chilling truth: Macbeth's downfall wasn't written in the stars. It was written in his choices. The witches whispered, "King," but they never said, "Murderer." That was all him. The symbols in the margins seemed to pulse faintly, as if reacting to the thought. One resembles a crown, its edges dissolving into smoke. Another, a dagger with a hilt shaped like a question mark. Outside, the wind howls through the trees, but the scholar barely hears it. Their focus narrows to a single line in their notes. The supernatural doesn't corrupt, it reveals. Macbeth's tragedy isn't about fate's grip. It's about the human capacity for self-deception. The witch's prophecies were a Rorschach test. Macbeth saw ambition, where Banquo saw caution. The symbols in the margins multiply as the scholar writes, spiraling into a pattern that looks unsettlingly like three figures holding hands. A coincidence, surely, yet the air grows heavier, thick with the scent of damp earth and something older: sulfur, perhaps, or the metallic tang of a storm about to break. The clock chimes again, though no time has passed. The scholar's breath catches. Macbeth's downfall wasn't just his actions, it was his refusal to see himself clearly. Every prophecy became a mirror he smashed rather than face his reflection. The symbols now form a circle around their notes, framing Macbeth's name like a funeral wreath. And then, a sound, not the wind, not the clock, a whisper, so close it could be coming from inside their own mind. "All hail." The scholar's pen clatters to the desk. The room is empty. The symbols remain, and somewhere, far away or perhaps very near, three shadows dissolve into the night, their work done. Macbeth's story ended long ago, but the lesson lingers. The real magic was never in the witch's words. It was in the silence that followed, where choices took root. The clock strikes one final time, its echo fading into the dark. The scholar stares at their notes, now eerily blank except for a single phrase, written in their own hand, but with ink the color of dried blood. The cauldron is always stirring. Who will taste next? The scholar's fingers tighten around their pen as a chilling realization settles in the witches' prophecies weren't just relics of a superstitious past. They were blueprints for the kind of manipulation that thrives today, wrapped in algorithms instead of incantations. Think about it. How often do we cling to vague promises from charismatic figures, bending them to fit our desires? How many times have we seen a viral prediction about stocks, elections, even the end of the world, twist its way into collective belief, despite glaring holes? The parallels coil around the scholar's thoughts like smoke. The witches didn't need magic to ensnare Macbeth. They needed only the right words, delivered at the right moment, to a mind already primed to hear them. A gust of wind slams the window open with a crack, sending papers spiraling into the air like startled birds. The scholar lunges to catch them, but the pages flutter just out of reach, their edges brushing against something unseen. And then, the whispers, not the scattered, hissing fragments from before, but a chorus, perfectly synchronized. You know the game, you've seen it played. The words slither through the room, too crisp to ignore. The scholar freezes, because they're right. Modern manipulation wears different masks. Social media echo chambers, conspiracy theories spun from half-truths, influencers peddling certainty like a commodity, but the mechanics are eerily familiar. Ambiguity weaponized, fear monetized, and always the illusion of choice. One of the escaped pages lands face up on the desk, revealing a scribbled note. Propaganda isn't new. It's just industrialized prophecy. The scholar's breath hitches. That's the heart of it, isn't it? The witches didn't invent Macbeth's ambition. They amplified it. Today's digital soothsayers do the same, tailoring their riddles to our insecurities. A targeted ad whispers, "You deserve this." A news algorithm feeds us doomsday scenarios. An influencer's vague, "Trust the process," becomes a lifeline for the disillusioned. The tools have changed. The human vulnerability they exploit hasn't. The whispers swell, threading through the scattered papers like invisible ink. Tell them, they urge. Tell them how little has changed. The scholar's hand trembles as they reach for the nearest page. A printout about deepfake technology. It's no cauldron, but the effect is the same. Reality distorted until we can't trust our own eyes. Macbeth questioned the witch's apparitions too late. How many of us are already drowning in digital phantoms, mistaking manufactured narratives for truth? Outside, the wind howls like a wounded animal. The scholar's laptop screen flickers, and for a heartbeat, the reflection staring back isn't theirs. It's a face crowned with shadows, lips moving in time with the whispers. All hail the algorithm. Then it's gone. The room falls silent, but the warning lingers, because the real horror isn't that we're being manipulated. It's that we're so willing to believe. Macbeth had an excuse. He lived in a world where witches might have been real. What's ours? The last paper drifts to the floor, landing atop the others. A single phrase stands out, circled in red. The first step to breaking the spell is knowing you're in one. The scholar picks it up, their fingers brushing against something sticky. Not ink, but something darker. The whispers fade, leaving only the wind and the terrible, thrilling clarity of hindsight. Macbeth's tragedy wasn't his times alone. It's a mirror, and the question isn't whether we'll look into it. It's whether we'll recognize what stares back. The scholar's breath comes faster now, shallow and uneven, as they stare at their own reflection in the darkened window. Something's wrong. The face looking back isn't quite theirs. The corners of its mouth twitch upward, a smile too knowing, too sly. A cold sweat prickles their neck. How long has it been since they slept? The notes sprawled across the desk seem to shift when they're not looking. The hastily scribbled theories about the witch's influence, now crawling with symbols they don't remember drawing. Spiral-eyed owls, knotted thorns, a threefold crown dripping ink like blood. Their hands shake as they gather the papers into a pile, the edges crackling like dry leaves. Fire, that's the answer. Burn the cursed things before whatever's watching from the margins decides to step closer. The lighter clicks once, twice nothing. Not even a spark. The scholar's throat tightens. It was full this morning. They try again, thumb pressing desperately against the wheel. Silence. The air smells suddenly of damp earth and spoiled milk, the same scent that clung to the witch's cavern in the play. A whisper slithers from the shadows near the bookshelf. You called us scholars, now we call you. The voice is layered, 3 tones braided into one. The scholar staggers back, knocking over a mug of long cold coffee. The liquid spreads across the desk, black as pitch, and for a horrifying moment, it seems to form letters before soaking into the wood. They lunge for the matches next to the candle, but the box is empty. Not just empty, rusted shut, as if buried for decades and only just unearthed. The reflection in the window tilts its head, amused. Too late, it mouths, though the scholar's own lips never move. Outside, the wind rises, carrying with it the faintest echo of a chant. Double, double, toil and trouble. The scholar's pulse hammers against their ribs. This isn't paranoia, it's recognition. They've spent too long picking apart the witch's words, and now the words have noticed them back. The notes on the desk rustle without a breeze, pages flipping to reveal a fresh line, scrawled in handwriting that isn't theirs. Turn around. The lighter finally sparks a single, sulfurous flare, but the flame isn't orange. It's green, and it burns cold. The scholar's hands slam down on the desk, sending papers scattering like startled birds. Enough. Their voice cracks through the silence, louder than intended, bolder than they feel. If you're here, if you've been here all along, show yourselves. The demand hangs in the air, trembling between defiance and desperation. For a heartbeat, nothing. Then the candles. Every flame in the room snuffs out at once, plunging the study into darkness so thick it feels like breathing ink. A cold draft coils around the scholar's ankles, slithering upward until their breath mists in the suddenly frigid air. Then a sound, not a whisper, not a voice, but something in between, a hiss that seems to form from the shadows themselves. You seek answers, mortal. The words slither from all directions at once, the cadence all wrong, syllables stretching like taffy. The scholar's pulse hammers, but they don't step back. Instead, they grip the edge of the desk, knuckles whitening. Not just answers, the truth. No riddles, no half-truths. Why Macbeth? Why him? The candles flare back to life, but the light is wrong. A sickly blue that casts long, wavering shadows up the walls. The shadows don't move with the flames. They twitch on their own, forming shapes too fleeting to name. The voice comes again, closer now, sourceless. You presume we chose him. A laugh like dry leaves skittering on stone. The hungry heart chooses itself. The scholar's throat tightens. It's the same pattern, isn't it? The witches never claimed responsibility. They offered possibilities, and Macbeth, a gust of wind, tears through the room, though the windows are shut. The pages on the desk rise in a whirl, circling the scholar like vultures. One slaps against their chest, sticking there as if glued. The ink is fresh, glistening. All mortals kneel before something. Crowns, prophets, mirrors. The scholar peels it away, fingers trembling. Then what are you, mirrors or makers? The blue flames shoot higher, licking the ceiling. The voice, when it comes, is no longer a hiss, but a chorus, 3 tones braided into one, vibrating through the floorboards. We are the echo, the spark. The door left ajar. The shadows on the walls sharpen, elongating into figures with too many joints, fingers like twigs, but only the living can walk through. The scholar's breath comes fast. That's it, isn't it? The revelation coils in their gut, terrible and bright. The witches didn't corrupt Macbeth. They exposed the corruption already there. The candles gutter, the blue light dimming to embers. The voice fades with it, thinning to a sigh. Ask better questions, scholar, or the answers will burn you too. Then silence. The shadows collapse into ordinary darkness. The air warms. The scholar stands alone, the only sound their own ragged breathing and the soft rustle of pages settling back to the floor. One lands face up at their feet, the ink now faded except for a single phrase. The mirror cracks from side to side. Outside, an owl cries once, twice, as if marking the hour. The scholar sinks into their chair, the weight of understanding heavy as a tombstone. They came searching for the witch's secrets. Instead, they found a truth far more unsettling. Some doors, once opened, can't be closed. And the things that walk through them were always waiting on the other side. The air in the study stills, the last echoes of the witch's voice dissolving like smoke. The scholar's pulse races, but their fear doesn't linger. It's eclipsed by something far stranger, recognition. The shadows along the walls don't twist into monstrous shapes anymore. They shimmer, shifting like ink and water, until 3 figures emerge, not the cackling hags of legend, but something older, quieter. Their eyes aren't pits of malice, but pools of dark fire, watching with a curiosity that feels almost familiar. One spirit steps forward, her gown sewn from twilight itself. When she speaks, her voice isn't a hiss but a murmur, like pages turning in an ancient library. You thought us tempters, she says, but we are scribes. The story was never ours, it was yours. The scholar's breath catches. All those hours hunched over texts, chasing hidden meanings. Had they been part of the play all along? The second spirit lifts a hand, and the scattered notes on the desk rise, rearranging themselves into a pattern that wasn't visible before. A spiral, with Macbeth's name at the center, and threads radiating outward, each leading to a choice, a consequence, a life altered. We do not weave fate, the third spirit whispers. We hold up the loom. The scholar's throat tightens. This changes everything. The witches weren't pulling strings, they were mirrors, reflecting the choices humans made when faced with their own desires. The first spirit smiles, but it's not cruel, it's sorrowful. You asked why Macbeth. Ask instead, why any of you? The question lingers, heavy as a crown. Outside, the wind dies. The candle flames burn steady and gold again, their light washing the room clean of shadows. The scholar blinks, and the spirits are gone. But the air hums with the weight of their revelation. This wasn't a haunting, it was an invitation. To see the play not as a warning about supernatural forces, but as a challenge. What do we do with the prophecies we're given, the whispers we mistake for destiny? The desk is littered with notes, but one page lies pristine at its center, bearing a single line in ink that glints like starlight. The cauldron stirs only when hands dare to lift the ladle. The scholar sinks into their chair, not in fear, but in awe. The story was never about the witches. It was about the choices they exposed, and perhaps, just perhaps, that's the most terrifying magic of all. The lecture hall hums with an energy that crackles like static before a storm. The scholar stands at the podium, their voice no longer reciting analysis, but vibrating with the weight of lived revelation. The witches weren't the architects of Macbeth's downfall, they say, fingers brushing the edges of their notes where ink still glistens faintly blue. They were the first to hold up a mirror to his hunger, and he couldn't look away. A ripple moves through the audience, students leaning forward as if pulled by invisible strings. The scholar's gaze drifts to the back of the room, where shadows pull thicker than they should beneath the emergency exit sign. Someone in the front row raises a hand, their question trembling with curiosity. But if the witches only reflected Macbeth's ambition, why does their language feel so deliberate? The scholar's lips quirk, not quite a smile. Ah. That's the trap, isn't it? They didn't lie. They simply made truth slippery. They tapped the podium, the sound echoing like a distant drumbeat. Think of their prophecies as ink blots. Macbeth saw crowns where Banquo saw caution. The witches didn't place the knife in his hand. They just made sure he noticed it was there. A murmur spreads through the room, pens scratching frantically against paper. The scholar's voice drops, drawing the audience in like conspirators. Here's what the text doesn't say outright. Every prophecy had an out, a loophole. None of woman born could have meant immunity. If Macbeth hadn't already slaughtered Macduff's family, Burnham Wood might have stayed rooted if he hadn't ruled through fear, turning his own people against him. A student near the window gasps softly, their face pale. The scholar nods. Exactly. The witches didn't curse him. They showed him the price of his choices, and he paid it willingly. The applause starts slowly, then builds like thunder, shaking the old lecture hall's dust from the rafters. But the scholar doesn't bask in it. Their attention snags on the far corner, where the shadows seem to ripple, just for a heartbeat, into something resembling three clasped hands. Then it's gone. The scholar exhales, their grip tightening on the podium. The truth settles over them like a cloak. Some lessons aren't taught, they're witnessed. And the echo of those whispers, those half-seen shapes, will linger long after the last clap fades. As the crowd files out, buzzing with revelation, the scholar remains. Their reflection glimmers in the darkened window, and for a moment, it's not just their face staring back. It's all the faces that came before Macbeth, his wife, the countless others who have peered into the abyss of their own making. The light above flickers once, twice, then steadies. The scholar gathers their notes. The page is now impossibly cool to the touch. The lecture may be over, but the real work, the work of seeing clearly, has only just begun. The scholar's manuscript is published at last. Its page is heavy with ink and something far more elusive, the weight of witnessed truth. Libraries and lecture halls buzz with debate over its contents, but only the scholar knows the full cost of those revelations. The final page, left deliberately blank, isn't an oversight. It's a dare, a silent challenge to the next curious soul who stumbles upon these words, inviting them to add their own questions, their own encounters with the shadows that dance at the edges of understanding. Late one evening, long after the accolades have quieted, the scholar returns to their study. The candle on the desk, their old companion through countless nights of research, burns low. Its flame wavers as they run a finger along the spine of their published work, feeling not pride, but a quiet kinship with Macbeth himself, not in his ambition or his crimes, but in that moment before the end, when he realized the witch's prophecies were never about control, only clarity. The scholar's reflection flickers in the window, blurred at the edges, as if something else is peering through. The candle sputters, its light dimming to a single, struggling ember. In that final breath of illumination, the scholar sees it, a single line of text curling across the blank page of their manuscript, written in no hand but their own. The tale is told, but never finished. Then darkness. The candle expires with a sigh, its smoke twisting into shapes too fleeting to name. Silence settles over the room, but it's a silence that hums. The air smells of wax and old paper, yes, but also of storm, wet earth, and something sweetly metallic, like a promise made in blood. The scholar doesn't reach for another candle. They sit perfectly still, listening, because the whispers aren't gone. They've simply shifted, woven now into the rustle of turning pages, the creak of floorboards under unseen feet, the distant cry of an owl that might just be laughter in disguise. Somewhere, in another study, another time, a new scholar cracks open a book and pauses at a peculiar blank page near the end. The candle beside them gutters suddenly, though no wind stirs. They lean closer, unaware for now that the story hasn't ended. It's only just begun.